Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be doing this New Year's inspired look and also reviewing the VISEART Petits 4 palette in the shade Lilas. And that's this little cutie here. So VISEART recently released a bunch of these Petits 4 palettes, and this for me was really the color story that stood out the most as being unique compared to my existing VISEART collection. And so I thought I'd pick this up, and this is the look I've been loving to do with this palette. And I think this is perfect for a really festive New Year's occasion. It has the cool tones of winter, but with a lot of the silvery shine of a New Year's festivity. So even though we're all probably staying at home this year, I figured I'd share with all of you this look so you can still have a little bit of a celebratory moment at home this New Year's. So if you'd like to see some swatches, this demo, and my thoughts about this VISEART palette, then just stick around. So to start things off, let's go in with some swatches. So these are the 4 shades finger swatched. And first off, we have Fondant, which is described as an iced silver rose with a shimmer finish. Next up, we have Lilas, so the namesake of this palette. And this is a light muted mauve with a matte finish. And then next up, we have Tiramisu. Actually, let me re-swatch that so you can hopefully see it a little bit better. So that's Tiramisu, which is a light cool taupe with a matte finish. And then finally we have Argente, which is a silver with a shimmer finish. So there we are. Those are the 4 shades. So I think one thing that's not totally clear when you first see pictures of this palette is that even though these 2 shades look in pan just like your typical silver shades, they are actually both really unique. So this one, which is described as a silver rose, does have a bit of a taupey rose base to it. So even though it has a lot of that strong metallic silver finish, if you move it around, you can see that there actually is a little bit more going on there. And similarly here with Argente is really like just a deeper version of Fondant. So even though the shine on this is just a very straightforward silver, the base definitely has a little bit more brown, a little bit more rose to it. So I think overall these 2 shades are really unique and just go very well with the matte shades in this palette. And these mattes too are just so beautiful and unique. This Lilas shade really has a beautiful pinky purpleness to it, which is really apropos since it's basically a lilac shade, but I still think it's really unique. Most pinks either are just straightforward pink or purples are just purple. This has just a hint of that purpliness to it and marries very well with the taupes. This Tiramisu shade is interesting to me in that I wouldn't really think of a shade like this as being tiramisu. I would imagine much more of a deep brown color, but this is a really gorgeous grayish light taupe shade. And so I think all of these colors just go so well together, even though none of them are that common. So now that we have the swatches out of the way, let's go into how I achieved today's look. So I'm gonna start today's look with this shade over here, which is the namesake of the palette. So it's called Lilas, and I'm gonna use my fluffy Rephr number 1 brush just to put this all over the lid. And I really love using this brush for just an initial all over lid application. I think it does a great job of just diffusing the color because it's kind of fluffy, but it still gives you a decent amount of control over the shape because of its unique kind of oblong shape. Okay, there we go. So that was super easy, as is to be expected with VISEART mattes. They are super easy to blend. And the reason I like starting with this shade sort of all over the lid is the rest of this palette is very monochromatic, very silver and gray. So I think it's important to have as much of this pink down as possible. So next up, I'm gonna go into the Tiramisu shade, which is the other matte color. I'm gonna use just the same brush and kind of put this a little bit more in the outer portion of the lid. You can see this is actually a really light shade, so it just kind of cools down Lilas a little bit and almost makes it a bit more of a purple tone when layered on top. And I'm just blending this up so that when I add the silvers, there's gonna be more of a smooth transition between the sparkles and the pinky lilac shade. Now I'm gonna go into Argento, which is the deeper silver shimmer shade. And I'm gonna use my Wayne Goss number 4 brush because I wanna put this in the crease, but I wanna have a bit more of a precise application with this since it is such a sparkly shade. All right, so let me see if I can build this up a little bit more. You do need to be a little bit careful with this shade because it is just so sparkly. Let me actually see if I go in with my Rephr number 1 brush, which has a little bit more of a packing brush shape to it, whether that helps. Okay, still need to build up the opacity a little bit more, so I'm just trying to press the pigment in here because this is a very flaky formula. I would usually use my finger for this kind of formula, but because I'm trying to make sure I keep the shape consistent, that's why I'm using these brushes. So I'm just going back in with my Wayne Goss number 4 now just to refine the edges. Alrighty, so now I'm gonna use Fondant, which is the super shimmery light silver shade here. And I'm just gonna apply that with a finger. So look at that shine. Woo, yeah, you definitely will have a bright silver eye with this. Alrighty, so just a little bit of that shadow really goes a long way. So I'm gonna now go in with my Wayne Goss number 4 just to blur out these edges because whenever I use a finger application, it's never gonna be super precise. There we go. And I actually want to just further blend things out and also just add more of the matte shades back in because I feel like they're being a little bit overwhelmed by all the shimmer. So going back in with my Rephr number 1 and dipping into Lilas, I'm just going to sweep that around the edges of the shadow. And just to finish things off, I'm gonna go in with my Wayne Goss number 4 and dip into Tiramisu just to add a little bit more of that as well. Just right on the edge of where the shimmer kind of stops. There we go, so lid done. Now for the lower lash line, I'm going to start with this Isom S31 brush and go into Lilas and just drag that all over my lower lash line. And since this is a pretty light shade, you can be fairly generous with it. And then I'm gonna try to use this brush as well to go into Argento for the outer part of the lid. Okay, I think that works. I was worried the brush might be a little bit too large for that, but I think it can still do this sort of outer corner detail work. And now going in with my Wayne Goss number 5 brush, I'm going to take some of Fondant and put that on the inner part of the lower lash line. Alrighty, so that's all the eyeshadow on the lids. Quick and easy look, but definitely very high impact. This is a very festive look to say the least. So just to tie everything all together, I'm gonna go in now with my M Cosmetics brush liner in the shade brown, give myself a nice cat eye, and be right back. So now with the eyes done, let's go ahead and just finish off the rest of this look. I'm going to start with some bronzer from Marc Jacobs. This is the Omega Bronze in the shade 106 Tantalize. This is my second time using this bronzer, so don't have a ton of experience with it, but I'm gonna just go in with my Rephr number 5 brush. This is such a huge bronzer, but I really liked it the first time I used it, so I have high hopes for this time as well. Okay, yeah, this bronzer just goes on super easily. It's kind of like a matte version of my Gucci bronzer. That one has a little bit of sheen going for it, but this one definitely has an overall matte finish. I think if you guys saw my initial video about this, it might actually be coming up after this video, but I think this one kind of is like a mix between the Charlotte Tilbury and the Gucci in terms of pigmentation and formula. Alrighty, there we go. That was really nice. I am digging the nice degree of contour that that gave me. So next up for blush, I'm gonna go in with my Hourglass Ambient Sculpture Lighting Palette, and with the Rougher number 4 brush, which is just a little bit smaller, I'm gonna go into this Mood Exposure shade, since I think it has a little bit of the lilac tone that this eyeshadow has. And then for highlighter, I'm gonna go in with my mini Sculpture Edit palette and use this highlight shade here with my Wayne Goss Artist Small brush. And I'm not gonna put a ton on because we already have a lot of glitter on the cheeks, on the eyes, but just wanna make sure the cheeks kind of can stand out as well. And I'm actually gonna take a tiny bit of this also on the brow bone and just grab my mini booster and put some of this in the inner corner too, just to add some additional champagne pop there. I'm just gonna blur out the brow bone area too. For the lips today, I'm actually gonna use a combination of products. So here I have my Hourglass Lip Stilo in the shade Innovator. So this is just a really, really bright red lipstick. And then over here, I have my Chanel Coco Rouge Gloss in the shade H16. This is, I think, Laque Noire. So it's basically a really, really dark purple gloss that comes across as black. And I think these two mixed will kind of go well with the burgundy in this dress and also just tie in some of the purpley hues from the eye. So to start off, I'm gonna just put this lipstick on. There we go, lipstick on. And you can see this is a very bright, sort of classic red with a tiny bit of blue in it. I really like this lip formula and color in terms of the effect that it gives. It's a really sheer coverage in terms of how it feels on the lips, but it definitely has a lot of opacity. That said, this definitely dries out my lips and also is such a bright red that I don't use it a whole lot. But I love combining it with this shade over here because this gives it a much darker, moodier feel and also makes it super, super hydrating. So the way I use this is I basically take this on my lips and then rub it into the lipstick and kind of use it to make my own custom deeper shade. So that's one layer down. So you can see it's definitely a little bit deeper, but still quite not as deep as I'd like it and also not totally blended in. So I'm just gonna grab a little bit more of this and keep building up the coverage. So several layers of this black lip gloss later, this is the effect that you get. And I really like this combination because you can really customize it in terms of how plummy and deep you want it versus how red. And I think this color right now just really matches the dress and also sort of tones down some of the really bright sparkliness of the eyes and makes this overall look just a little bit more sophisticated. So there we go. That is the look of the day. Let me know what you guys think. I hope that you enjoy this kind of festive New Year's sparkly eyeshadow and makeup look. In terms of my overall thoughts, I really love this little Petits Four quad. It's just so adorable and these shades are so unique. I think this is the perfect little quad if you don't have shades like this, which at least in my experience, this is a very unique color story. And for me personally, most days I wouldn't really gravitate for this kind of really blinding silver eyeshadow. But in the context of this tiny little quad, I think it's perfect in that you could easily take this with you traveling, for example, once we all start traveling again. And you also can occasionally whip it out for just a more festive look. And you can also pair these with other shadows if you want some more mattes, for example, from another palette, or if you want just a more neutral look, you can draw from one of these, or you can exclusively do the mattes and then get some darker mattes from another palette. So I think this is overall a pretty versatile palette to draw from. I'm also just so impressed with how they created this very unique color story. So if you look at the other Petits Four palettes, the color stories are a little bit more straightforward. So the chocolate one is like a brown and orange color story. Framboise, the raspberry one, is just raspberry pink. Praline is sort of neutral caramel colors. This is really not something I've seen much of in terms of the taupe, lilac, and silver combination. I definitely don't have shadows like this, and I'm just so impressed by how they made each of these shades quite unique so they all cohere together. This is not your standard pink, not your standard taupe, not your standard silvers. They all have a little bit of that taupe, lilac, and silver element to them. And so even though these are very different shades, I think they're just so consistent and lend a really interesting but still coherent look to the eyes. And of course, this is in VISEART's very excellent formulas. So the mattes, you know, are your standard VISEART mattes, blend like a dream, really, really easy to use. But I was actually extremely impressed also with the shimmers in this palette. So typically your VISEART shimmers are going to be a little bit more of sort of a natural satin finish. These are probably amongst the shiniest formulas I have seen from VISEART. And normally, even if I see a really shiny foiled shade like this in a VISEART palette, they'll at most just be one of these shades. So the fact that this is half extremely foiled and shimmery is quite impressive to me and makes me wonder if VISEART might start experimenting with some new, more high shine formulas, because that's definitely not what the brand is known for. But I think they did a great job here, and these are just so beautiful on the eyes. So I would overall highly recommend this palette. It's probably not one that you're going to start using for your everyday going to work sort of look, but it's a really fun palette in a tiny little package that I think is just perfect if you want to just, you know, spend $20 some and try the VISEART formula, or just diversify the types of shades that you have in your collection. This is just a wonderful little holiday edition. So thank you guys so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope all of you have a good New Year's celebration. It's been a crazy year. Here's to hoping that 2021 will be a much better year. So thank you so much for joining me, and I am a new YouTuber and this channel is brand new as well, so I would really greatly appreciate it if you subscribed or liked this video or shared it with other makeup enthusiasts. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Bye!